What made you realize there was something off about your friend's partner? Story 1. I met them when they were already a married couple, and everything seemed fine until she went into labor at my house. Since it was her second child, she knew it was early labor and decided to rest on our couch while we hung out. We were going to watch her older child when she went to the hospital anyway, and our house was 30 minutes closer to the hospital, so it made sense for the three of them to stay at our house until go time. That's when my husband and I started noticing her husband's strange behavior. He was a very charming guy and seemed to be a good father to his son, but he started making fun of his wife during her contractions. He would roll his eyes and tell her to shut up if she even made the slightest groan. He joked that she was being weak and was overreacting. The whole situation became so awkward that my husband insisted he go home to get their hospital bags just to give the poor woman a break from her awful husband. A few months after the birth of her second child, he hit his wife with his car while she physically tried to block him from leaving during an argument. He disappeared for days and didn't come home until she proved to him that she hadn't gone to the hospital or contacted the police. This began a pattern of systematic mistreatment that continued for 2 more years, which she hid from me expertly. He would hurt her and then threaten to withhold money for groceries if she told anyone. I knew he was terrible and that she often needed me to pick her up to get food from food pantries because he was bad with money, but I had no idea he was hurting her. She finally left him after he threw her through a window while she was 8 months pregnant with their third child. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. He had a full-on toddler-level temper tantrum twice during one group game night. The first time was during a trivia question when he couldn't remember the planets in the solar system. Then, later that same night, he got angry while playing Uno, threw his cards down, and stormed out. We all looked at each other and then at our friend. That was when we knew he was off. My friends and I were all in our mid-20s, and he was over 30, so it was definitely unacceptable behavior. A couple of weeks later, it was my friend's birthday, so we all went out for the night and ended up at our neighborhood bar. He threw another temper tantrum, I think it was over dart scoring or something equally ridiculous, stormed out and peeled away in his car, leaving us with no ride home. This was pre-Uber/Lyft, and none of us wanted to spend the money on a taxi, so we sobered up during the roughly 2-mile walk back to my friend's house. Thankfully, she broke up with him not long after. She is now with a wonderful guy who not only knows the planets of the solar system, but also treats her much better. Story 3. My best friend's ex-boyfriend walked like he was trying to intimidate people. Every time he asked someone a question about their opinion, "Hey, what do you think of that statue?" or "Do you like sauerkraut?" he'd respond to their answer with, "I had a feeling you were going to say that." It seems harmless, but it was every single time, and if you called him out on it, "You couldn't possibly have known I was allergic to that," he would lash out in anger. Every time she tried to break up with him, he cornered her and wouldn't let her leave the room until she gave in. Even their couple's therapist thought she should leave him for her own safety after 2 or 3 sessions. He would wait for her shift to end, just sitting in his car in the parking lot. If she didn't come out fast enough, he'd storm into the building in a fury, but if she came out on time, he'd just leave. He wasn't there to pick her up, just to monitor her, which he also did through a GPS tracker he put in her car. She now has a restraining order and has moved twice. He broke into her apartment with a gun while she was fast asleep and snuggled up behind her with the gun between them as if it were part of his body. That's how she woke up. There are other things, but this is getting long. To edit because people are nosy curious about other things he did. Helped me move, but only to find out where I lived. After their breakup, he came to my door several times looking for her, and when she was generally not there, he settled for monitoring my house. Extreme fitness enthusiast who was obsessed with telling people whether or not he could bench press their body weight. Hint, usually not. Lots of gaslighting. I don't remember the details. Insisted on changing her cat's name, which didn't stick. Wouldn't let her not watch TV with him, even though there were 100 things she'd rather do than watch TV at any given time, up to and including getting a pap smear. This inspired multiple fights. charmed her parents so successfully that they insisted she go to couples therapy to work out their differences, which were, "I don't want to be constantly monitored," and "your general controlling behavior is creepy," versus "you have nothing to hide if you're doing nothing wrong." Ultimately, their breakup was supervised by the couple's counselor, who had building security waiting in the lobby and her hand on a panic button, who knew she'd have that. Stormed into her workplace when she quit, post because he decided they had fired her, and his plan was apparently to threaten them to get her job back. Took her to court to argue against the restraining order. The judge looked at my friend's documentation and noticed how she was leaning away from him even though they were on opposite sides of the room while he was making kissy faces at her, and granted the order. Made very public posts on some weightlifting social media platform about what a crazy ex-girlfriend he had and linked her profile to his own profile. Story 4. I was best friends with a guy. I am a woman. We had been friends for a few years with never any chemistry or anything like that, at least on my end. He got out of a long-term relationship and started dating around. He'd often introduce me to these women as sort of a barometer to gauge whether or not he thought they were a good match. One weekend, he invited a girl out with our group. She was super standoffish, wouldn't smile, and clearly wasn't having a good time. I tried to talk to her, get to know her, and tell her about my friend and how great he was, but she acted like I wasn't there. I might as well have been wallpaper. A month later, I was on a date, and we ran into them. Remember, I was also on a date with a man. As they were leaving, they came over to say hello. She seemed equally unhappy to be alive. I introduced my date, and the three of us chatted for a minute while she stood there. I jokingly tugged at his shirt in a playful, "you old dog" kind of way. She stormed out of the restaurant. Both guys were confused. It wasn't a flirty touch of any kind, more like a friendly bro touch. The next day at work, I work with this guy. He came up to me and said, "Hey, you can do stuff like that. She's really damaged and has jealousy issues. She doesn't trust men." I apologized profusely because I didn't realize I had done anything wrong. I even asked my date about it, and he was baffled as well. This friend had an emergency key to my house in case I ever got locked out. He returned it a week later, citing something about what if you call at 2 a.m. But isn't that the point? Isn't that what best friends do, help each other in times of need? Fast forward a few months, he refused to speak to me. Again, we worked together. He wouldn't look me in the eye and slowly gave up other relationships, both male and female. After dating the girl for 6 months, they got engaged. Now they're married. I have no idea how it's going or if he's happy. I ended up moving and haven't spoken to him since. It makes me really sad to see people give up who they are for a relationship. Story 5. He started attending my college at 26, which isn't strange in itself, but he insisted on living in the dorms for 3 years. It's not like we're in a college town with expensive, far away, or low-quality off-campus housing. He just liked the ego boost of being surrounded by kids 8+ years younger than him. My friend was 19 when they started dating. Another thing was that he called himself a full-time stand-up comedian with his own YouTube channel. In reality, he mostly did open mic nights at bars, and he couldn't stand watching other people perform if it wasn't him on stage. He would sit there seething whenever my friend said she didn't want to leave while other performers were still up. The creepiest moment, though, was when my friend asked me if my boyfriend ever watched porn involving animals. Completely taken aback, I said, "Hell no," and told her that would be a major deal breaker for me if he did. She replied, "Oh, my boyfriend told me every guy watches it." Thankfully, they broke up last week, and I couldn't be more proud or more relieved for her. Story 6. A bit of background, this was a good friend of ours and a previous roommate. At this point, he'd moved out about a year and a half prior, and we'd only had internet contact with him since. This was a meetup of old friends when we went to visit home. This was the first time my wife and I, met his newest girlfriend after his previous long-term relationship ended. She wasn't so bad, kind of giggling and goofy around him since he's a bit more serious, but fine, they seemed happy. We were out for dinner when she and my wife went off to the bathroom. I thought this was odd since my wife is kind of a tomboy and doesn't do the whole girls go to the bathroom to do their makeup and gossip thing, But I found out later that our friend's girlfriend had invited her to ask a few questions about our friend. Well, after about 20 minutes had gone by, I realized they weren't back yet. We were both tipsy and engaged in conversation, so time had gotten away from us. This was a small gathering of a few couples, and one of the other women went to check on them. We found out that our friend's girlfriend had basically cornered my wife in the bathroom, crying and demanding to know why our friend had a secret crush on my wife and why he wouldn't admit it to her. After getting the recap from my wife, she said she had no idea if the girl was going to lash out on her or what, since apparently she had pressed my wife completely against the wall several times. Apparently, it was a mixture of my wife wanting to calm her down and also being a little afraid, since she was half this girl's size and legitimately couldn't get past her, that caused the long, drawn-out ordeal. Luckily, the person who went to check on them snapped the girl out of it and diffused the situation. Very bizarre. We've seen her one time since, not exactly on purpose, and she acts like the whole thing didn't happen. We still have no idea what was going on with her, but it was definitely unsettling, but I have no clue beyond that. Story 7. He showed manipulative behavior from the very beginning, but my friend convinced herself that love could fix him. Within the first year, he cheated and used threats to keep her from leaving. By the second year, he was controlling her phone and social media, deciding who she could and couldn't talk to. She thought that meant he cared. By year 3, the cycle had gotten worse. He cheated multiple times and would stage dramatic breakups to manipulate her. At one point, the emotional toll pushed her into a really dark place, and she ended up in the hospital. That's when we staged an intervention and begged her to leave. For a little while, it seemed like she would, but within weeks she was back with him saying, "He bought me expensive gifts, so how could he not love me?" Eventually, she even cut ties with me because he didn't approve of our friendship. As far as I know, she's still with him today. Story 8. Long story. My best friend was adopted as a kid. His adoptive parents were killed in a car accident when he was 11. He was in the back seat but survived. We became even better friends. We went to the same schools in college. He decided he was going to marry this girl. I was happy for him, but I had never met her since I lived out of the country at the time. The wedding was in 6 months. I flew down to see family and ended up going out with my girlfriend and some friends, and we all met up at a local restaurant. I met his fiancée. She seemed nice and welcoming, but flirted subtly with me. Nothing major, but she talked about my appearance quite a bit in front of her fiancé. I didn't think much of it. Later in the evening, I went to the bathroom. As I walked toward a stall and entered, she jumped in front of me and closed the door with both of us inside. I asked her what she was doing. Her response was, "Anything you want." I immediately pushed her out, sat down, and in shock had no idea what I was supposed to do. I went back to the table. I was quiet. I realized that I should tell him what happened. I pulled him outside and told him what had occurred. He was in shock, too. It ruined the whole evening, and the next day I flew back to my hometown with my girlfriend to see my family. We didn't speak for months until the wedding. I was his best man. The whole family was cold to me. The bride hated me. We don't speak anymore, but I know what happened, and our mutual friends support my decision to tell him. He claims she said it was all a misunderstanding due to being drunk. I know what I saw. I know what happened. I know what she was trying to do. I feel bad because I've probably lost a friend, but my conscience is clear. Good luck, Philip. Story 9. The first time we met her was at a bar. My boyfriend and I arrived early, so we found a Scrabble board on the game shelf and started playing. When my friend and his girlfriend got there, literally before even introducing herself, she looked at our Scrabble board and said, "Wow, that's a lot of small words. Are you guys stupid?" My boyfriend and I were so stunned that we kind of just ignored the comment. Was she joking? Anyway, she unsurprisingly turned out to be a psychotic bish. Story 10. My cousin and I grew up together like brothers. I immediately knew his new girlfriend didn't like me from the look she would give me and how blunt she was when I tried to engage her in conversation. A few months down the line, I tried to arrange a meal with my cousin and asked him to bring his girlfriend along so we could break the ice. Everything was arranged. I showed up at the restaurant, and they didn't. I was stood up. They are now married and have 2 kids. I wasn't invited to his bachelor party or his wedding. I was, and still am, gutted. I met my wife and invited him to my bachelor party. He was all paid up, and I couldn't wait to see him again. It was the thing I was looking forward to the most, but he didn't show. Again, I was gutted. He and his wife showed up to my wedding and acted as if there was no problem. It was quite strange, but I didn't care since it was great to just spend some time with the man I had considered my brother. We kind of kept in contact via text but never met up, even though I tried to arrange it a few times. Then my son was born. I was desperate for them to meet each other and bent over backwards to arrange a meeting. I agreed to meet at a play area so his daughters could tag along and play while he got to meet my son, who is named after his brother who passed away. I sat there for an hour before he messaged me to say he wasn't coming. As a final attempt to salvage some kind of relationship, I invited his family to my son's christening. I got a message an hour after it had finished saying he wasn't going to make it because his wife had arranged to do something else. That was 4 years ago, and I haven't heard from, seen, or spoken to him since. It still makes me sad, but as long as he is happy, that is all that matters. Edit. Just to expand a little, I have tried to contact him many times via text, phone, and Facebook message, but I haven't had a response. I don't believe he is happy, but I don't know enough about his relationship to pass judgment. He has cut me off, and there is nothing I can do to change that. I just hope that one day we do get a chance to sit and talk it through, just so he knows I don't hold anything against him or her. If he wants me to be part of his life, then great. If he doesn't, then at least he knows I still love him. Story 11. He started trying to pick fights with me just to separate me from my cousin. At the time, we were in our mid-teens, but he looked 17 or 18. Clean-cut glasses, very doing boy band sensitive type. He was polite to parents, but to me, he felt off. I'd had enough rough experiences growing up that I could sense red flags early, and this guy set them all off. His smile never reached his eyes, and he was always watching people too closely, like studying their reactions. When I didn't fall for his charm, he switched tactics, telling my cousin he didn't feel comfortable around me and pressuring her to see him alone. He'd bully me in small ways while still bragging that he was her protector. A few months later, we learned the truth. He wasn't a teenager at all. He was in his mid-20s, and he already had a record for stalking and assaulting underage girls. On top of that, he exposed her to serious long-term health consequences that she'll carry with her for life. Looking back, I just wish we'd known sooner. Sometimes those early gut instincts are the most accurate warning sign. Story 12. My best friend started dating this girl about a year ago. She was awesome, always seemed so nice, and was very fun to be around. About 3 months into the relationship, everything was going great. Then he asked her to move in with him. The day came to move in, and I went over to help move the heavy stuff. Lo and behold, she showed up with a 5-year-old. When he asked who it was, she said it was her son. We were blown away. She had never mentioned it or said anything about having a kid. Her Facebook had 0 pictures of her kid, and no one had mentioned her child. It was a big cover-up, and she basically just wanted someone to support her and her kid. He noped out of that one right then and there. Story 13. I had a friend for years. He was an old boyfriend when we were around 15 or 16. I lost touch with him and finally found his number shortly after I got married. We chatted for about 5 minutes on the phone, and I said I would call back when I had more time so we could catch up. When I called back, his then-girlfriend answered the phone. She knew who I was. We were all part of the same group. She told me I was never to contact him again, said he hated me, and explained that she was talking because he didn't even want to speak to me. I just wanted to see how he was and tell him about my new husband. A few years after that, they broke up. She cheated. I sent him a message and found out she had done that to most of his friends and family. He was just starting to piece his life back together after she had slowly isolated him. He had no clue and thought I had just never called him again. Story 14. Early on in their relationship, he installed some kind of app on my best friend's computer that let him control her mouse from his phone. I thought that was really messed up, but when I said so, he laughed it off like it was just a harmless joke. About a year later, he asked her to log into Facebook to see if it was working for her. Later that day, she came over and asked if he could have somehow saved her password. At first I said no, unless he had installed a keylogger. And sure enough, that's exactly what he had done. But the wildest incident happened after they broke up. He tried to pose as me on Keek by creating a username that was just slightly different from mine, close enough that my friend might not notice and think it was really me. Looking back, the whole relationship was one giant red flag after another. It was controlling, invasive, and honestly just exhausting for her. Thankfully, she got out, but it was a long, messy ride. Story 15. When my husband and I were helping them move, he would only speak to or answer my husband. I had an idea for how to move some stuff up the stairs, and the guy just blew me off. So I told my husband to casually mention the same exact idea, and poof, it was suddenly an awesome idea, so we had to try it right then and there. This always put her down, and she would just take it. In the end, he broke up with her because he felt she wasn't thin or pretty enough for him. Then he would get mad at her for trying to move on and tried to sabotage every relationship she attempted to have. I ended up ending the friendship because I couldn't stand listening to her complain about how he was treating her when she would keep going back to him. Story 16. She was super friendly, but I'd catch her looking at me out of the corner of my eye with not a nasty expression exactly, but not a friendly one either. Sort of wary. I am also a woman. She'd also casually mention odd little details when talking about her life that made it seem like she had a pretty skewed idea of relationships and gender roles. She went to an all-girls boarding school, and even though she was 24, she was the first of all her friends to ever have a boyfriend. She'd say things like, "It's ridiculous to expect a woman to change a light bulb on her own. Ha, or make out that some things were a big deal in relationships when they really weren't, as if she'd gotten all her knowledge from rom-coms. Just really tiny things that wouldn't be significant on their own, but when added all together, they really set me on edge." She ended up going full-on psycho and not letting him see any of his friends or do any of the things he enjoyed for 2 whole years because she was basically jealous of every single other woman in the world, even his male friends' girlfriends. It took his brother coming around and having a good long chat for him to realize she was a control freak who was ruining his life. It was a timely escape too, since she was starting to talk about babies. Story 17. When my best friend and his girlfriend started a long-distance relationship, I didn't think much of it. But when she would repeatedly make fun of him to her friends on Twitter, I brought it up. She repeatedly cheated on him and acted like they weren't serious at all. I told my friend again because he was head over heels. They finally broke up because of a fight over something unrelated to the things I had brought up to my friend. Then they got back together, and my friend used the information I had told him to make a stipulation. If she wanted anything to do with him, she had to be serious. For whatever reason, she stuck with it. She started pulling him away from me gradually. Quick flashback. When his ex gave birth to his 2 sons, I dropped everything, was late to work because of one of them, and spent as much time as I could with them. When I had my daughter, I invited my best friend, not once, not twice, but 3 times to meet her. He couldn't be bothered to come to the hospital, not because of work, but because he needed to be on the phone with his girlfriend. I burned that bridge so quickly. Now they're engaged with a kid of their own. He moved to Florida for her and is an alcoholic now. Good riddance to both of them. Story 18. The year my now ex and I visited my best friend for Thanksgiving. This is a fairly long story, by the way. I tell this story to people all the time because she's just an awful human being, and this story was a perfect example of it. In 2009, we traveled from South Carolina to Orlando to stay with my best friend Tom of about 22 years now and his then-girlfriend Lauren. We decided it was too expensive to fly up to New York to see our families, so we drove down a few hours to have a friend's Thanksgiving. We used to be roommates, and he is a badass cook, so we figured, let's do this. So he and I spent all day shopping, cooking, etc., and dinner time rolled around. We had the usual spread: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, rolls, and it was all sitting on the counter. We went into the living room to get the girls. Lauren came in first, went into the cabinet, and pulled out 3-4 large Tupperware containers, saying, "Hang on, nobody take anything yet. I need to make sure that I have leftovers for work this week." She proceeded to take about 60% of each dish, leaving extremely small portions for everyone with no options for seconds. She also took about 85% of the white meat because reasons, put all her Tupperware in the fridge, and then grabbed a plate from the already small amount remaining. She took about half of each dish, slopped it onto her plate, and walked into the dining room. My girlfriend and I looked at each other, took small plates, and went to sit down. My best friend was visibly upset but didn't know what to say. She ate about half her food, then proceeded to throw what was left on her plate away. Now, to clarify, Tom has the biggest heart of anyone I know. He's a 6'5" guy with a heart of gold who would give you the XL shirt off his back. Why he was with her, I don't know. He had a good job making $50,000 plus. She was not a large girl. Average build, she worked at an architectural firm doing 3D renderings and was fairly book-smart, not starved for money. Important for story reasons. I really wish that were the end of this, but fast forward to the next morning. Tom decided he was going to make turkey soup with the leftover carcass and meat. Yum! Big giant pot, lots of goodies inside. At the same time, while watching the soup, he had been browsing Craigslist for an Xbox 360 and came across someone who was willing to meet that day. So he put the soup on super low, and we all decided to go out and get his Xbox. Lauren said, "Oh, I will get it for you as an early birthday present." And I thought, wow, maybe she's not so bad. So we went out, bought the 360, and headed home. Literally, the second we walked in, we could dig into turkey soup. But as we were about 4 minutes from home, Lauren got hungry. She said she wanted a double cheeseburger from McDonald's so she could dunk it in her turkey soup. Tom argued that food was ready and we could see the driveway, but she made him go to McDonald's so she could get a double cheeseburger. Okay, she was the only one who got anything, and we got home. She rushed to the kitchen, got a huge bowl, and proceeded to take the large ladle and scoop right from the bottom, filling her bowl with most of the goodies and little soup, leaving mostly broth for everyone else. She went into the living room, sat down, and ate while we stood there dumbfounded. Almost there, I promise. We made our soup, sat down to eat, and Tom wanted to set up his new Xbox. Lauren didn't really respond as she was dunking her burger in soup and stuffing her face, so he got it set up and fired up Dragon Age, just playing around with it. Lauren had now had enough soup, which, by the way, was her burger, and about 3 spoonfuls, got up and threw out about 75% of her meal. She walked over to the TV, turned off the Xbox, and said, "Okay, you've played enough. I want to watch TV now," ending with, "Well, because I bought it for you, I can decide when you can use it and when I want to watch TV." I was mind blown by this girl. The next day couldn't come fast enough. End story. I was absolutely mesmerized by her and how she could be so incredibly selfish. About a year later, by the way, he went to work, waited until she was gone, came home, packed up his stuff, and left, never speaking another word to her again. Being the nice guy he is, he even left her money for his portion of the rent for the remaining months on the lease. TLDR, best friend with a heart of gold dated a selfish monster for years who had no regard for common courtesy. Edit. For anyone curious, he is now engaged to a wonderful girl who is a very big part of our small core group of friends. She treats him extremely well, and he's way better off now. They also live together about half a mile from our current house, and our dogs are absolute best friends. Edit 2. Had the wrong year. Also, lots of questions about why he even stayed with her, or if we talked about it. We had many conversations about it. At the end of the day, it was a comfort thing. They owned 2 dogs together, different from the beagle in the picture, and he would have had to save up money to move out to his own apartment, plus maybe some other reasons I don't know about. I think we've all been in those toxic, abusive relationships where, no matter what, we stay in them for way too long. I am not saying it's right, but it happens. He knew he was in a terrible spot. Also, yes, he took the Xbox. Lol lol. That was about the only thing aside from his clothes. Edit 3. Thank you, anonymous gift giver, for the gold. My first one, and I never thought this would blow up so big. Haha. I am glad that everyone is enjoying the story, hating the girl, and virtually high-fiving Tom. Some strange part of me feels like he's getting some form of retribution, as over 6,000 people have seen her monstrous ways. Thanks all. I am trying to answer questions as I can. It started moving really fast all of a sudden. Story 19. The double date we went on where he corrected her on the difference between UFC and MMA, and she turned into the corner of the booth and didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the night. He wasn't allowed to hang out with me either because I was dating someone and they might have hot friends, or I was single and needed a wingman. There was the time I used my dad's truck to help them move, and she got mad at me. I don't remember why, I just remember her friends doing almost nothing and then leaving before we were done. The final straw for me, I had decided she was an abusive shrew long before this, was when we were working for his parents' band on a riverboat concert. She got mad that we were hanging out, literally just talking on a small boat. She left her ring on the table and left the boat the second it docked. Unfortunately, they made up after this and have been living together for the last year. I am hoping it ends soon. Story 20. Well, she's 20 and he's over 10 years older. 6 months into their relationship, she tells me he won't let her touch his phone, but gets mad if she doesn't let him touch hers. A year passes, and she's never been to his place or met his family. The only time they see each other is at work. The guy is either married or has kids. Edit. Just to clarify some things, I don't believe age gaps are inherently bad. My friend is very mature for her age, but I'd never date my boss. The phone thing isn't necessarily bad. I don't check my boyfriend's phone, but it's kind of weird if you forbid your partner from ever looking at yours. They've been together for more than a year. He doesn't want to meet her mom, and they don't go to his place. I haven't asked why because she gets mad. And no, having kids isn't bad either, but being lied to about having kids isn't okay. She won't let me meet him or see him because he doesn't want to. They don't take pictures together, but I've heard him on the phone. I am not saying this means the guy is a bad person, but it feels off, and I felt like it fits here. Story 21. I was friends with this guy for a year while deployed overseas in the UK. His wife was always just plain mean to him in front of others, calling him stupid, talking about their failing intimate life in front of him to friends, saying a real man would earn more money for the family. Not to mention, she was calling her 2-year stint in the UK her vacation from work. She also refused to stop hanging out with his male friends and would stay with them overnight. After one particularly nasty comment she made to him in front of our boss at a retirement dinner, I said in front of him, "Dude, your wife is a bish." A week later, while he was at work and thinking she was in the States visiting her mother, he came home to an empty house. Everything was gone. Couch, bed, even his laptop and video games. He called the cops thinking he'd been robbed. Turns out his future ex-wife had come back with her family and movers and cleaned out the home and his savings accounts, everything without a word. He lost his home and was forced to move into the barracks. I just said to him, "I am sorry, dude, but your wife is still a bespeak." Story 22. She messaged me to let me know she wouldn't be on her phone until she got a new one, because the one she had was busted. When I pressed a little, she told me he had thrown it and stomped on it when she complained about it dropping calls and having a terrible battery. So, being a typical best friend, I said I would make the jerk pay for it. Fast forward a few hours, and he's on her Facebook Messenger, reading our conversation and trying to justify his actions to me. It gave me the creeps to have him reading our private conversation. He has also thrown a remote through their plasma TV when he was mad. I know that he will lash out on her one day, if he hasn't already and she's just keeping it secret. It makes me sick to my stomach. Story 23. My friend randomly made an Instagram and only followed his girlfriend, her mother, sister, and some of her friends. Naturally, I was confused why he didn't follow his best buddy, that is me, so I followed him and he followed back. I asked him if he saw a picture I uploaded, and he said, "Oh yeah, I didn't make that. My girlfriend was looking at my new phone and it had Instagram pre-downloaded. She accidentally clicked it and it automatically made an account for me." I replied, "Oh, so it automatically knew to make an account with your name, a username with your name, a profile picture of you and her, have one post of you and her, make a cheesy bio about your girlfriend, and follow her family and best friends. Oh, and it followed me back weeks later, so it must be acting on its own, well after she accidentally pushed it once. The only thing he could say was that the internet is crazy and you never know what type of AI technology they have out these days. No, mate, your girlfriend is crazy. Story 24. Someone hacked a friend's boyfriend's computer and posted a bunch of very sensitive photos on 4chan and other similar websites, but for some strange reason, nothing else like his bank records or email was compromised. How odd that this hacker would only be after her private photos. I immediately said, "It was him. He's the one posting the pics online." She spent so much time saying what a great guy he was and how it couldn't possibly be him because he had an important job working for a major politician and that he wouldn't compromise his dream of a career in politics. A few months later, she finally came to realize that he was an emotionally abusive psychopath and dumped him. Then he started posting her name and address and pictures on online. She got a restraining order. He kept doing it, and eventually, he got prosecuted and is no longer allowed near a computer. I still think he got off way too easy. Story 25. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I always knew from the very first time I met him that he was a bad person. Charismatic, charming, and affectionate to her, but his eyes were empty. They married 14 years ago when she and I were in 11th grade. She had just turned 18 and had a horrible home life. She unofficially lived with us, with my parents being more like parents to her than her own. He was a bit older and had enlisted in the military during the height of the Iraq War. A month before he deployed, after they had moved 3,500 miles away, he beat her in a drunken rage after she discovered he was having an affair. While he was deployed, he won her back through emails and phone calls. He came home far more damaged than before. Things seemed okay for a few months until she walked in on him in their bed with another woman while their infant son slept in a bassinet beside the bed. She naturally threw the woman out before trying to make him leave as well. He broke her phone and her jaw. She was still thousands of miles away from me, but I packed a bag and drove 4 days to get to her. She ultimately took him back, and things seemed to stabilize. 3 more children and many years passed without incident. When their youngest was 2, he beat her again, this time in front of their children. Police were called and he played the role of victim using his PTSD and other post-military diagnoses. She has no job, no high school diploma, she dropped out to be a military wife, and no family to fall back on besides me. We offered to have her and the kids move in with us temporarily until she got on her feet, but she chose to stay. Recently, she and I drew up a notarized document stating that I am to get their children if something were to happen to her caused by him. I am keeping my fingers crossed that it never comes down to that. Story 26. I had a holiday in Vegas with my friend and his partner. It was just supposed to be the 2 of us, but he asked if his partner could tag along. Okay, fine. It started badly on the plane. He refused to carry my bottle of water when I asked him to help me out. Since I had some bags, he point-blank refused to eat at any restaurant I suggested. When I tried to make conversation, he would ignore me or just grunt. He kept commenting on how much alcohol we were consuming. I am not an alcoholic, but it's bloody Vegas. It was terrible. To make matters worse, he convinced my friend that I had made him feel very uncomfortable for the whole trip and that I didn't make an effort. I was shocked. We haven't spoken in months, and I am devastated. Over 10 years of friendship gone. Story 27. I never got on with the guy while everyone else did. I found him to be very much a know-it-all. If you had done something, he had done it 10 times better. I am sure my wife had a thing for him. It was always, Rob has done this and Rob has done that. Isn't Rob a great guy? Tracy is so lucky to have Rob. Why don't you and Rob go fishing? Why don't you and Rob go for a beer? To keep the peace, I would. And each time I spent time with the bloke, I disliked him more and more. Something just didn't feel right about him. I ended up telling my wife that I couldn't handle the guy anymore and that I wouldn't have him round our home again. She had the raging hump, called me an unsociable twat, jealous knob, etc. 2 weeks later, it came out that Rob had been beating Tracy, was a raging alcoholic, mentally abused his kids, and was shagging some woman from down the road. Now, everyone thinks Rob is an absolute a-hole. Edit. My missus is getting quite a bit of grief now. No one knew how much of an evil piece of work Rob was apart from his wife and kids. Also, she calls me a knob, twat, bell-end, jerk all the time, and I reply with similar colorful language. Pretty sure that's normal banter in the UK? Story 28. He wasn't allowed to come over and have a hangover day. A couple of beers, greasy food, smoking, football this Sunday because his girlfriend was doing homework. He's almost 27 and she's 21. They showed up at like 6 p.m. He was invited for 12 p.m., and it was me and two other dudes just shirtless, not showered, and napping on the couches with the game on. I woke up to him getting yelled at by her. Edit. Okay, so this is blowing up, and there are some really weird homophobic comments starting, so let me clarify. I sleep without my shirt on, and so does my roommate, I assume. The reason we were shirtless was because we didn't think to shower or get dressed. We just wanted to hang out in some comfy clothes and be low maintenance that day. If we'd known she was coming, we probably would have put a shirt on or something. But as I stated in the story, they showed up like 6 hours later while I was sleeping. Also, just because you didn't shower that day doesn't mean you're smelly. It's not like we just had an intense workout. We're not savages, just lazy that day. Story 29. In person, he, the SO husband, was quiet and kind. But she, the friend, told story after story about his pill-popping, fraud, suicide attempt, and general emotional abuse. She left him. I had a falling out with her. I caught her in a couple of lies, and I just abruptly ended the friendship. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, my husband had befriended the SO at the gym. My husband didn't care that this guy had a bad reputation as painted by his ex-wife. He was a cool gym buddy. About a year after I ended the friendship, I became friends with her ex-husband. It's been 3 years of friendship now. Every time I learn something cool about the guy. Marine, passionate about his kids, solid hard worker, true and loyal to the core. We often compare stories. I will tell him her side of a story and how badly she painted him out to be. He'll either tell me his side, which is black and white, opposite of what she said, or he'll flat out deny such a story ever existed, with proof. So the moral of the story is, while I thought something was off with him, it was all proof that something is off with her. Don't believe everything you hear. Edited to delete the word X from Marine, as suggested. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Story 30. She has no concept of reality. One of the first nights we hung out, she talked about how their relationship was equal parts storybook and fate. They had been dating for about 1 month. Reality. She was a massive rebound and trapped my friend with a pregnancy. Here's the full story. Steve dated Jenny for about 5 years. Jenny was smart, beautiful, and kind. Steve is an idiot and cheated on Jenny with Kayla. Jenny never found out, but she and Steve broke up. Steve started dating Anna. Anna was fun, cute, and caring. They dated for about 4 years. Steve is an idiot and began cheating on Anna with Kayla. Anna and Steve broke up. Anna came 2 hours early to move her stuff out of their apartment and found Kayla in the bed. Now Steve is with Kayla. Kayla truly believes their story is one of romance and not of Steve repeatedly betraying his past girlfriends. On the first night we hung out, I drunkenly told Steve that he needed to do whatever it took to get back with Anna. He desperately told me that he had ruined it and that wasn't an option. All of this was directly in front of Kayla. About 6 months in, Kayla and Steve went on a mini vacation. Kayla got sick and went on antibiotics. The antibiotics messed with her birth control. Kayla got pregnant. Steve married her. During all of this, Steve was telling me how it was a short-term fling. Fast forward about 6 years and another kid later. Steve is clearly miserable. We stopped visiting them because Kayla makes my wife upset. We'd come over to their place and Steve would be trying to parent and control the kids while Kayla would sit on the couch and watch TV as if we drove an hour to spend time with her. No story better illustrates his misery than my 30th birthday party. Steve and I have been friends since we were 5. The day before my 30th birthday, he called and said he couldn't make it. I thought it was weird, but whatever, I am an adult. About 6 months later, I found out the reason, and it made me despise Kayla more. Kayla got fired from her job. She had been unemployed for about 6 months. Steve works 40 hours a week at a distribution center to make up for Kayla's lost income. He was working an additional 40 hours a week answering tax questions from his home. My friend was working 80 hours a week to support his family and handling childcare. Kayla turned down job offers because she thought they were beneath her. Basically, don't cheat. Karma is real. Story 31. Everyone loved him straight off the bat. He got along really well with anyone. I noticed that he was mimicking the behavior of whoever he was with. Despite being so well liked in our group, he somehow had no friends of his own to speak of. When we'd all go out, he was always alone. Which was odd. He was very outspoken, flamboyant, and friendly. Not a loner. Lots of free time. Liked to go out. Where were his buddies? He said, "I love you" to my friend 3 weeks in while pretending to be asleep, in case it was poorly received so he could take it back. Around the same time, he stopped turning up to his job and stopped leaving my friend's house when he slept over. As in, my friend would go out in the morning and the new SO would still be there 3 days later. He started wearing my friend's clothes. They're both men, but it's still weird for such a new relationship. The new SO showering and would bug our group for money. Despite all this weirdness, he had ingratiated himself into our large yet tightly knit group so well that everyone felt like they were best buds with him and had been forever. He gave me the creeps. I noticed a lot of his stories didn't line up. He started muttering things under his breath, violent things. He'd get confused and laugh and smile when asked what he just said. More stories didn't match. Big things about his life, family, and history, and little things about what he had studied or where he went last week. The filth he lived in grew. Mounds of moldy plates, filthy, stinking clothes, still no work. He was fired because he just stopped going and hung around in my friend's house all day, stinking up his dressing gown. By this point, my friend had decided he wanted him gone. It turned out that he had no friends from before he met our group because he had swindled his ex-friend out of her insurance money from her dead father. There was a litany of other things: rent unpaid, drama caused, word said, the usual. The friends from my group who lent money never saw a penny back. The newly ex-SO went AWOL and disappeared for 3 days, leaving his passport, phone, coat, and keys behind. Post-breakup, there was also some drama about him sleeping with my friend's FWB. Not because he liked him, but because he wanted to cause jealousy. And we know because he told everyone. He changed from a well-dressed, friendly, clean, funny guy to filthy, crazed, borderline sociopathic, and a pathological liar. At first, I thought I was being overly sensitive because he was displaying a lot of behaviors I saw in my dad. I thought, hey, give the guy a break. I am being the crazy one. Nope, lots of little weird things added up to one big problem. Listen to your gut. Story 32. One of my old best friends started dating this new guy. I hadn't seen her in about a year and was looking forward to meeting him and catching up with her. They both had birthdays in the same month, so I invited them to come up my way for a club night she and I used to attend, and offered to take them both out for dinner for their birthdays as a nice gesture. So they live about an hour from me, and she said she'd text me as they were leaving so I'd know what time to expect them. I showered and just sat around on my bed browsing Reddit or whatever, figuring I'd start doing hair and makeup once I got her text. Next thing I know, they're already here, and I am just in my pajamas, looking totally unprepared for a night out. I invite them in and tell her I wasn't expecting them yet. She says sorry she didn't have cell service and the text never went through. I said they could just hang out inside while I get ready real quick. Give me 20 minutes, would you like anything to drink? And then I realized her boyfriend didn't follow her into the house. She says he's going to wait in the car so he can smoke. Okay. Then he leaves. He comes back like 45 minutes later, and apparently he's gotten Wendy's because he didn't have time to wait for some bitch to get ready. When we left for downtown, I took my own car instead of carpooling with them because I was super uncomfortable with this guy, giving the excuse that I'd probably want to stay out later than they would. He hadn't said a single word to me and just stayed in his car the whole time they were at my house. They followed me to the parking area, and then he decided he wasn't going to get dinner or go to the club with us and took off to do his own thing. Still without acknowledging I even existed, Needless to say, my friend was very upset by his behavior, and I don't even know what to make of this incomprehensible level of rudeness with no apparent reason. She and I got some food and then headed over to the club. She texted him to let him know what was up. He wanted her to come out and leave immediately. She stayed for one drink, crying to me the whole time about how he's not usually like this. She's so sorry, they probably won't even stay together. She might break up with him tonight. Well, they're still together, and it's been over a year since then. She and I have not spoken since. What an ass. I left out some of the other small details because this was already super long, but for real, there is something just not right with that guy. Story 33. My story is kind of different. I think I am the off-significant other in this one. My boyfriend and I went to support one of his friend's shows. His friend is in a pretty successful band, and they were playing in our area. My boyfriend hadn't seen his friend in months, and his cousins, who I am friends with, were going too, so it was a really exciting night. I was genuinely happy to support my boyfriend's friend's band and to experience a live show in my local area. Long story short, I got pretty buzzed and started dancing with my boyfriend near the front of the stage. At one point, I started yelling a lot of woos and yeah-has, and eventually I started yelling, "Dude Guy Rocks." I probably yelled "Dude Guy Rocks" like 10 times. I was pretty buzzed and just trying to be a supportive girlfriend. The next day, during hangover snuggles, my boyfriend got a text from his friend saying, "Why was your girl saying dude guy's hot last night?" My stomach dropped. I know, and my boyfriend knows that I definitely did not say that. But it drives me nuts that his friend thinks I did, and that my boyfriend had to warn him about me, though good on him for doing so. My boyfriend replied and corrected him, but he never responded. I hate the idea that he just thinks I am the kind of girl who flirts with other guys directly in front of my man, especially when I was just trying to be cool and supportive to this friend. Just a dumb misunderstanding that makes me cringe a bit. You know, "You rock" definitely sounds like you're hot when yelled by a drunk girl over loud scream music. Story 34. I worked with a woman who was, without a doubt, only working so she could find a sugar daddy. She called everyone love and hugged people the moment she saw them, sometimes up to 5 times a day, then would turn around and talk trash about them. She told everyone she was in medical school, which was obviously impossible, that she was rich while actually living in her car, and whenever a work topic came up, she would immediately insist she was an expert. Then she'd launch into long-winded explanations that made no sense whatsoever. Downright crazy. Her clothing was just as bizarre. She'd show up in multiple layers, sweaters, shirts, scarves. As the day went on, she'd slowly peel them off until she was down to a tight-fitting tank top with elaborately knotted scarves around her neck, glittery belts, skin-tight jeans, cowboy boots, you name it. Our office allowed casual dress, but she looked like she was headed to a nightclub. Anyway, she somehow managed to get into a romantic relationship with one of my coworkers and moved in with him practically overnight. Then she immediately quit her job, supposedly for a better one. He bought into all her lies and never questioned them. Suddenly, she wasn't working at all, which meant he was supporting her 100%. She wanted to go to concerts, weekend trips, bars, and nightclubs every night, and this poor guy was being drained of both time and money. After about 6 months, he tried to break things off, but by then he was in too deep. She's a master manipulator, and every time the subject of breaking up came up, she'd pull the Christianity card and convince him to pray with her to save their relationship. He's a devout Christian. They share a house with 2 other people, and somehow this woman managed to kick the homeowner out of the master bedroom. Now she lives in it, complete with the master bath, leaving everyone else to share the smaller bathroom. She does 0 housework, pays 0 rent, and yet rules the roost. No cooking, no cleaning, just watching TV and sleeping all day. She is, quite honestly, the devil incarnate. My coworker is a wreck but can't find the courage to kick her out. He's incredibly loving, forgiving, and generous, and because he knows she has nowhere else to go, he just tolerates her nonsense. I keep waiting for the crap to hit the fan and for the roommates to finally kick her out, but so far, they all just roll over and play dead while she calls the shots. Easily the weirdest thing I've ever witnessed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.